Hello and welcome to another free code session. My name is Jason Bach and I'm going to go through some work I've done off camera. Sometimes I just like coding and not having to do a recording and put my face up on the camera. So last night I just got into a mood to just do some work off camera and watch some videos while I was playing, or not playing, but playing videos, watching them and coding at the same time. So what was some of the stuff that I did off camera? Well, one of them is I didn't do this at all. This was an idea that I had that I thought would capture more information about the expectations you were setting on arguments. But as I realized, what happens is all you do is call is valid, and it tells you, is the expectation for the argument valid or not? It doesn't tell you what was passed in. I mean, I guess what I could do is have is valid return the descriptive message of why it failed. And now that I'm talking about this, that might be something to consider. The issue though too is that when I go through, and you'll see this because with another thing I'm going to be working on in this episode, but when I go through all of the parameter expectations, that all I do is call is valid on it. And as soon as one fails, it stops. And it just says this didn't work for this one. I guess what I could do is say expectation for this one failed. But what I also don't like, it's this tension of, you see this a lot on websites where you fill out a whole bunch of information, you submit, and it tells you one thing that's wrong. You fix that, you submit, and it tells you another thing that's wrong. It's like, I want to have everything validated before I finally say submit, and then I know it's good. And so with is valid, I thought, well, maybe what I could do is go through all of them, capture all the ones that are failing, and then tell you all of them at once. I guess that could be a possibility. So now that I'm talking about it, I'm going to actually reopen. Okay, so I'm not going to do that now. Hopefully I fast forwarded that part when I was typing that all in. So I'm not going to go through this now, but I am going to potentially consider it for a future episode or get that done off camera. I mean, when I think about it, typically the intent is that all of your expectations should pass. You should be going through the whole collection of them anyway. So the thing about it failing first was that just got you out of that loop quicker. But the intent is you really shouldn't be failing. So I think I'm okay with this. So we'll come back to that one. Okay. We'll come back to that one. But the one that I want to do right now is this Unsafe.As. So I did some work on this last night. And actually one thing I found is I think I got notes on this, is that when you're passing in an argument, it was possible to pass in a null. And what that would cause is an exception, but not the exception that you would want at all. Especially if I move to Unsafe.As. Every argument that a user passes to a parameter, every value should have an argument with it. And there was a hole where this wasn't happening. In that if you passed in a null value. Okay. So what I did is, I was like, no, you should never, you really should be passing as arg is null. Okay. Or if you cast it like this, what that does is I think it's the implicit operator kicks in and then it will make an arg as null for you. So, that's what, and then this would actually work. Okay. So I thought maybe make an analyzer, but no, what I've done now is when I generate these methods for all of the arguments, I always do an argument null exception, throw if null. So right there, it's going to catch it and stop it. There's still some potential work I might want to do to try to minimize any possible chance of you inadvertently or destructively changing the expectations, handlers, and their information, and blah, 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 and all the arguments, so that you don't slip one back in. Okay. So Okay, fair enough. And so I thought that would change this to being unsafe as and do that. So I got to this point and I did all the work for not just the expectations, but also when you would have a method up here and casting it to a certain type. What was interesting is I wouldn't get an exception anymore. I wouldn't get an invalid cast exception for certain cases where the generic actually changed. There was a couple of tests that I have where if I set an expectation where the generic should be of an int, but then I actually create an instance of the method, if the method has a generic, and then I pass that in as a different type, like a string or something, the way it works currently right now is you get an invalid cast exception, which makes sense because the expectation was set for a different type for the generic. And so if you change that, well, then all bad things will happen. So this actually is what I want to keep, because what I think what was happening here is we were getting no exception. And that was kind of bizarre. Now, again, this was kind of late at night. Maybe I could do this, but what I am thinking is we're not going to do unsafe as, because the benefits of using unsafe as is still like nebulous at best. You definitely get faster code, but we're talking about nanoseconds. And until this is the hot path, I don't see a reason to go to unsafe as just yet. But what I am thinking is when these casts happen, now that I've guaranteed that these won't be null, I'm thinking, why am I doing as argument is valid, false? No, that doesn't make sense at all. Okay. Just cast it, because if it isn't that, something really, really bad has happened anyway. And we don't want to actually gloss over the fact that, like, maybe the method had an open generic and you said in your expectations it should be an int, but that parameter type is now a string because of the way you've called it. This would actually mask it and just not fail at all. So we do want to change these. Okay. And that would be consistent with how we're doing the casts up here, I believe. Okay. So we're definitely going to keep this work that I've just done to make sure the arguments that you pass in are not null. We're not going to do that. We're to a cast. We're not going to. And then this one was just something I saw last time. Like, why do we have a concrete type? Why can't we just have IArgument? I don't even think, like, if I look at argument and we go to here, yeah, it's like, why does it derive from argument? There's nothing in here. Why don't we just make an interface? I don't know if that would make it slightly better in performance. Probably not. But we don't need an abstraction like that. We do need a base type that isn't generic, because we need to have a list or collection of arguments. And that's why we're doing all these casts, because of the generics. So in any event, actually, no, I can't. I was thinking maybe I could put an is valid here. But see, now I'm pausing because I think for certain projected types that need projection, the is valid is different. I'm not sure. But now, hold on. I got a thought. I got a thing running through my head. That's split. Oh my God. It's morning. I was like, it starts with an S. It's in .io. And I'm like, what is this? The lack of coffee. That's what I'm going to blame it on. Okay. So if I have public interface, IArgument of T, okay. And that had a bool is valid, where you had that. Okay. And now we have a public sealed class of argument of T. And that derives from IArgument of T. And yes, we have to implement it. And here we're just going to say return true because we don't know. Okay. But now let's have yeah, I don't think that will work. Like if I said var arguments is equal to a new IArgument. Yeah, I can't do that because there would be multiple argument T types that were in there, but the array type itself can't be, for the generic, can't be open like that. So that wouldn't, like I couldn't do IArgument of T like that and say new argument of a string. It's going to bark at this. It's going to be like, nope. Doesn't know what T is, doesn't. So yeah, never mind. But the thought is to at least have this be an interface. So anyway, so the work that I want to do right now is to do these as casts, not using unsafe though. What we want to do is just say like here, cast that, and then say that, and then also I believe same thing down here. And that should be there. And then we don't have this little bit of extra work that's going on here. Where if it's null, then we do, you know, if it wouldn't be that, where I'm thinking in most of the cases, it is that anyway. And so we should just make that assumption. Okay. We're not going to do the method handlers though. Okay. All right. So let's get to it. And this has to happen for both methods and indexers, because indexers have arguments. But since I did this last night, I kind of sort of remember where everything was. Yeah, down here. So we got to be a little bit tricky here. We got to pull this out. Okay. And then I think what we want to say is, okay, we don't need that. We don't need that, and we don't need that. What we want to do is cast this, except we don't need to do as argtype anymore. So we have this closing that, this closing that, that closes the whole thing, that closes that. And then we do the and, the true. Yes, so we take off argtype here. Close that, we put that in there. That does that, and now we can get rid of this. And that, yep. And that should be it for value builder. Now we need to do void builder, same thing. I believe we can pretty much copy and paste these because it's the same code. All right. But you're like, oh, that's repeated code, Jason. That's bad. Yeah, I agree. You're not get an argument out of me for this one. This is one of those things where arguably this could be shared code, but yeah. All right. So that does the methods. And now we need to do the indexer builder. Okay. So the getter, same thing, except slightly different. Okay. Here we have to do this. Okay. So we say that, That's what we want to cast this to. So now we can take all this off, right? Why are you barking so much? There, okay. You do one thing wrong, jeez. So that gets the cast, and then we no longer need this and that, okay? Same thing down here. Let's grab all of that, take that off, put that there, that, there. So that's the getter, and then the setter, I believe, is almost the same thing. There. Now what this will do is it will break some of the tests that we currently have where we're comparing code, because the casts are going to be different. But what we're hoping is that this shouldn't break the integration tests. So we're going to shut down, start up again, see if everything recompiles. If it does, we're going to run the integration tests first. If those pass, then I'll fix off camera all of the diffs in the code. So let's see what happens. Okay, well, that didn't work. There's a lot of generation errors. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run one of these, grab the code, and then we'll see what the problem is. Okay, it failed. So what we have here, if that looks right, I think, because we're trying to say cast argument of string, that dot is valid, and one. So we got 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 0. So that all closes. So let's actually put this in and see if it compiles. I'm wondering if I need to enclose that more. Argument is not, yeah, so that's the error we're getting. Oh, yeah, it doesn't do, it's precedence. It's not doing this first. And I was kind of sitting there in my head going, I wonder if I need more parentheses. Okay, well, we do. So let's get to it. So what we want to do is put a parentheses here and then put a parentheses there. That will force that cast to happen first. That will call as valid. So that's that one. Let's do value builder. So again, we want to encapsulate the cast, and then the indexer builder for both that, and then down here. So now let's come to this code and say this should be that, this should be that. And now it should actually compare and it should compile. And it does. One more thing before I finish this out, shut down, start up again, and let's see if now all the integration tests pass. Okay, well, everything builds. So now let's go to, sorry, I need to focus here. Now let's go to the integration tests and say run these. Hopefully these don't take too long. Ooh, 3 failed. Ooh, ouch. I bet I know why. Yep, it's all these. Yeah, this is kind of, crap. This is why I'm glad I can undo this very easily. I thought this just had to do with methods, but yeah, this also could do with the arguments themselves. It's the idea that you're setting an arg any here but then you're calling it such that the generic type is going to resolve to a string. And the reason why we do this is because we want to get we want to say the expectation was never met, because then you would never even get into trying to call the callback or anything else like that. So, okay. I've just convinced myself we don't want to do this. So, but we still want to keep this stuff. Okay. And having that be an IArgument, the argument, it doesn't really matter. So I'm thinking at this point, you know what? Let's not screw with this anymore, because let's just leave the casting the way it is. Okay. So what I'm going to do in the next episode is I'm going to start working on the code generation test console application. We have this big code generation. I'm starting to wonder if I got allergies or something, because like I thought maybe I got a cold when I went traveling a couple weeks ago, but it's just not left my head. I still feel congested to some degree. And I'm thinking maybe I should start taking, I think I do get allergies, and I'm wondering if something's just affecting me, because I can't get completely rid of this. Anyway, so this is this one that we all know takes a long time to run, but there's a lot of value in keeping this around. But I want to do something that's more flexible, just to say, hey, run this arbitrarily. It doesn't need to be and I want to grab more statistics. I want it to be, even in a console app, I want it to be a little bit more visual, to say, for this assembly, how many types were created, and yeah, just move this into a console app. And then maybe we'll look at changing is valid to doing that capture stuff, so that we get, though now that I think about it, all we do is say that no expectations were met. So honestly, you should just go back and look at your expectations and go, well, what are we setting and why isn't it matching? So maybe I won't do that. I don't know. Well, we will do the code generation thing, that test, moving into a console app in the next episode. Thank you all for watching. Leave comments and questions below. See you in the next episode.